Hello, listeners. We are your co-hosts, Janine Bailey and Marie Quigley, for the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast.
Empower World brings guests who are making a difference to the world to inspire coaches and leaders who lead with mind, heart, and soul.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to the next episode of the Empower World Coaching and Leadership Podcast. And today I am not with Marie, but I am with a wonderful guest of mine. And I'm really excited to introduce Joe Pane. Joe was someone who I met in my early development as a coach. In fact, Joe supported me to become a coach. And I know, Joe, that you have accredited over 7,000 coaches in your time as a coach trainer, as well as thousands of other students of extended disc, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. But I'm really pleased that you've joined us on our podcast again. I know you were an early guest of our very first podcast episodes. But I felt that this was a good time to bring you back, as I recognize that many people are interested in extended disc and the power of it. So I really wanted to bring you back to focus and share your wisdom, because I know that you are an incredible trainer and utilizer of extended disc. But before we dive in, Joe, I want to hand over to you to introduce yourself to our listeners. Over to you. And
Thanks, Len. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's fantastic. It was great to reconnect with you just recently. Um, so as of the time of this recording here in the year 2025, can you believe it? 2025. This is my 20th year in business. I started my full-time coaching and training business back in '06, in February of '06. Um, and um, and yeah, in 2010, I introduced extended disc into my repertoire, and I got qualified as a master trainer. My background, just very briefly, excuse me, I did a very intense aerobic session on the assault bike at the gym, and it's all, you know how it is. Sometimes it all feels funny in the chest. Um, yeah, I've got a psychology, sociology background. So back in the day, I did a degree in those two areas, which was fascinating from a theoretical perspective. And then later qualified as a coach, where I got to really apply some really cool strategies, mindset strategies to help people navigate challenges and difficulties. So it's been an amazing journey. And When I was about a few years into my business, I felt the need for some kind of personality or behavioral profiling instrument, or some kind of assessment that was statistically valid, science-backed, consistently reliable, and showed us more than just, what someone's personality is. So I brought extended disc into my realm. So I explored lots of other instruments at the time. I took quite a while, actually, as I was exploring these different instruments, to decide on e-disc, and really what was the clincher for me was that it's a behavioral profiling instrument, not just a personality profiling instrument. And my other background, briefly, as of the time of this recording, my wife and I have been married for 29 years, been together 31. We've got 17-year-old twin boys who we're blessed with, just beautiful boys. And Life is grand, Janine. What can I say? I've gotten to know, you're one of the, several thousand people that I've accredited in eDisc, and one of the 7,000 plus who I've, accredited in the coaching space. And it's been an absolute pleasure and delight to know you and be with you and reconnect with you now. It's fantastic.
Yes, I'm really delighted too, Joe. It feels like, yes, coming back to a place called home in a way. So
Yeah,
yeah, no.
nice,
So
nice.
and really appreciate you being in my world as well. So thank you again for being on this podcast, because again, I know the dedication, the research, and the experience that you have with extended disc and coaching and so much more, which I know we'll dive into going forward, is incredible. So, and yeah, like you, Joe, I certainly was fascinated with human behavior from quite an early age, well before I got into coaching. And I remember in my 20s being introduced to some psychometric profiles like Myers-Briggs, which I thought was
Mm,
amazing. And,
mm,
finding out or not finding out, but reading my own profile, it was just, it was so spot on. And it was, again, like, those blind spots, those unconscious blind spots that we all have,
mm,
that was just brought to the fore. And, oh, okay, yes, that is me.
mm,
Um, so it was a real appreciation of that, and that, of course, so fascinated with behavioral profiling and understanding and wanting to find out more, and of course, becoming a coach and then working with leaders and supporting them, often uh, in relation to communication, building relationships, being able to build trust and rapport was often a theme,
mm,
often a theme where people felt perhaps misunderstood or didn't know how to communicate effectively. And so something like extended disc became really important to me. And of course, being introduced to it through yourself, I recognized actually this extended disc is a wonderful way. It was a wonderful way for me to be able to understand and appreciate four dominant styles of communication, behavior, but knowing that, we're a mix of all of those, which can combine, when combined, can come out with, I think, 172 profiles, accurate,
mm,
really accurate profiles. But
mm,
when working with clients, leaders, to support them to understand, how can we adjust our communication so that we can be understood, heard, um, build relationships. So that's a common thing that I experience as a coach, that leaders potentially um, don't know how to build those relationships. An extended disc is a pathway to be able to understand another person's language, like learning how to speak Italian if you can't speak Italian and you need to speak to someone who speaks Italian, something like that. So Joe, in terms of your experience and how you would describe extended disc, what is it that you would share with someone who's curious about finding out more?
mm, mm. Yeah, great question. So the fundamental thing is that our beautiful listeners need to be aware of the difference between personality profiling and behavioral profiling. This is essential. I actually, back in the day, early 2000s, before I started my coaching business in '06, I actually was a qualified Myers-Briggs trainer and coach. Well, not a coach because I didn't know what coaching was, but back then. What I found was, look, Myers-Briggs, let's just be very clear, is a highly respected instrument. The reason why it's highly respected is because, like eDisc, it is statistically validated at a very high level of accuracy. The difference is that Myers-Briggs is a personality profiling instrument, whereas extended disc is a behavioral profiling instrument. To clarify even further, there are many different models and versions of disc in the marketplace, and most disc models are actually purely personality profiling instruments. The other thing I want to add to that is that there are also freebies you can do online for disc, and there are also very, very cheap profiles you can invest in for disc online, like $15 all the way down to zero for free. And I just want to share with the wonderful audience here that be careful of those, because I learned the hard way. I had a very large client called Jones Lang LaSalle, my one of my internet into one of my only sort of international, like that was global organization. I was doing lots of trainings for them, and before I got introduced into extended disc, I was using this free disc model, which was good as a basic introduction. But then I still remember the day I was in Sydney, Australia. I was running a profiling session with a group of about 25, 26 salespeople, all very senior and influencers in that organization. And half, I did their profiles, and half the room vehemently disagreed with me about their profile. And I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, because I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. And I assumed ignorantly that, the profile is a profile. And that was the beginning of the end of my association with Jones Lang LaSalle, because of my errors. Like half the room is a lot. Then when I got out of that, that really woke me up, sparked me up, and it's like, well, gee, I can't rely on this free version of Disc. Why didn't it work today? Like, and then I got introduced to a guy that was local to me in Melbourne, where I was living in Australia at the time. And he was a behavioral profiler. And I asked him, what is a behavioral profile? Isn't it the same as a personality profiler? And he said, no, a personality profiler or personality profiling instrument focuses on thinking styles. And it goes pretty deep into thinking styles and decision making to some degree, but thinking styles, how you process information, the modalities that you utilize, and a whole bunch of other things. And he said the risk of personality profiling is that people can fall victim into pigeonholing themselves and pigeonholing others. And I certainly did that because I remember when I had my Myers-Briggs, as good as it was, and that was really accurate. I was one of the things that it showed me was that I was a big picture person, and detail was something that was not natural to me. And I remember not taking responsibility for any of the work that involved detail-orientated thinking because my profile says that. So, hey, I can't do that. And to demonstrate the difference between that and behavioral profiling is when I did E-DISC, E stands for extended. When I did my extended DISC profile, the same result came out, is that I was a big picture person, or am a big picture person, and detail is a stretch. The difference is, and was then and is now, is that behavioral profiling taps into your energetic signature. It taps into your energetic expression. And so what it showed me was you can do big picture because it doesn't take much energy from your mind or from your psychic fuel tank. You can keep doing whatever you're doing big picture all day. But to do detail, you're pressing the accelerator harder and you're operating in a higher gear and you're using a lot more psychic fuel, which is a fancy way of saying I was using a lot of mental energy in doing detail compared to the energy I was using to doing big picture. I then realized that through my profile, I could expend up to 2 hours, 2.5 hours at a push per day doing detail orientated tasks before I started getting really tired. So the difference is that a personality profiling instrument, and we're not talking just Myers-Briggs, we're talking about any personality profiling instrument, gives us the why, it gives us the what. So it's what your style is and why it is that you are good at big picture and struggle with detail in the case of that example. Behavioral profiling gives us the what, the why, and the how. And the how is where the power is. That's where the magic is. That's where the value is. So through my behavioral profile, I got to learn how to embrace the detailed element of my psyche, if you like, or of my energy, my energetic signature, and know that, okay, based on my profile and based on my experience now, I've got about 2.5 hours of detail-orientated focus if I need to do that in that particular day. And then knowing that that's the case, once I'm out of that sort of function, I'm out and back to big picture again, if that makes sense. And there's a whole host of these patterns that exist inside both instruments. Yeah, I found that really, really insightful. So understanding, Janine, what brings energy to your system and what takes energy away. So this is mainly done through two sort of factors. One is what kind of environment are you in physically that brings energy to you versus taking energy away. So for example, if I'm an analytical thinker, I'm not, but if I was a highly sort of technically based, analytical, detailed, fact-driven thinker, that kind of energy type, the C energy, the compliant type, works extremely well in isolation. And we know that if you isolate a C energy in an office by themselves all day, that they'll be fine. But you put an I energy in an situation, in an environment that the C energy flies in, the I energy, you will get nothing out of them after 11 o'clock in the morning. Like they'll be tapped out by lunchtime. And in terms of their focus, their productivity, their efficiency, their everything, their effectiveness.
Joe, what is the I energy for the audience? How would you describe that very
So the
briefly?
I energy is very much a people-oriented energy. It values connection and relationship building. It's really into the who. Who do I get to connect with, and who do I get to share this experience with?
Yeah. And so they like to work with people. They like to connect with various
Absolutely.
versus being in isolation.
That's right. That's right. So the C energy in contrast gets energized working in isolation, whereas the I energy, if you were to place them in the same physical environment as the C energy's environment, their energy would pretty much tap out by 11:30 in the morning. So the I energy likes to be around movement, likes to be around other people. So I could be doing, as an I energy, I could be working detail oriented tasks, doing some admin stuff on my laptop. But if I'm doing that in the middle of a busy cafe with people everywhere, that helps me focus. Whereas that's the C energy's worst nightmare. So it's a matter of understanding, okay, well, this is your profile. So what environment imbues or encourages or brings energy to you? So there's environment, and then there's also relationships. What kinds of relationships bring energy to you, and what kinds of energy relationships bring, suck energy away? So these are really important aspects of behavioral profiling. The other aspect, so these are all the things that are contained in, so I'm going to say this as respectfully as I can. I'm not here, I'm not a divisive kind of character or anything like that. I'm just trying to state this as accurate as I can. So forgive me if anyone takes this the wrong way. But here's the thing, based on, in the 20 years of my business, behavioral profiling has been 15 years in my business. And I've been in front of all different audiences, all different groups, in all different types of situations, from extremely difficult to, sales and performance through to leadership. I mean, I've used it everywhere and everywhere. And here's what I've discovered, and I say this with the utmost respect, is that I have found that personality profiling is the shallow end of the pool and behavioral profiling is the very deep end of the pool. And the reason why I know that's true, and the reason why that is true, other than the energy stuff that I've just spoken of, is that also when you do a behavioral profile like extended disc, you actually receive two profiles in one report. And those two profiles, one of those profiles produces your inner world wiring. So how you're naturally wired on the inside, your natural, organic, real energetic signature of how your energy spread is, your energy load. So are you predominantly, more people orientated? Are you more things orientated? There's all of that, but it's the energy and how it's actually applied in your professional and personal life. The other profile in the report shows your conscious profile. So your natural profile is your unconscious. It's what you're not necessarily aware of. You're aware of how you feel, but you're not necessarily aware of why and how you create that feeling. And that's what the profile gives us, sheds light on. It gives us that clarity. But also there's a second profile. And that second profile is where we get amazing levels of insights, because that second profile is our conscious profile, what we refer to as our non-natural profile. So in other words, how have you dialed up or dialed down your various energies in order to thrive, survive, and perform in your role? And what influences what you dial up and dial down are perceived demands that the role has or that my responsibilities have, whether it's as a parent, as a business owner, a leader, or whatever the role is. And once we have a conscious profile that's been dialed up and dialed down and moved around, that one is always changing, and we can compare it to home base, which is how we're actually wired, we get all kinds of insights in terms of why this person's experiencing what they're experiencing and how we can change it if it needs changing. That's huge. Personality profiling doesn't do that. It does not do that. It doesn't give you two profiles and one gives you one. The other aspect of this, which I think is the deep end of the pool as well, and I love this, is emotional themes. It's when, there are approximately 9 emotional themes. Did I do that right? Yeah, 9 emotional themes in eDisc, which we're not going to list here. But to give you an example, one of those themes, and I had this morning or yesterday in one of my eDisc unpacks that I did with a leadership team, is one of those themes is the theme of insecurity. This is not, the emotional theme is not how were you feeling when you answered the questionnaire. It's about a theme that's present like a psychological cloud in the backdrop of your mindset that is interfering with your life. So I think getting access to emotional themes, getting access to how you dial up and dial down your energies in comparison to home base, understanding your energetic signature, having an appreciation of other things I haven't even mentioned here, like decision-making strategies, core drivers that drive your decision-making as well. There's all of these other elements that are buried in the unconscious mind that are only to be found in the deep end of the pool. So whereas I found the shallow end of the pool is a very good thing if you want a basic surface level introduction. But once you go deeper and you want to go, okay, well, how do I use this information to improve performance, to improve impact, to add value to my client base, to whatever the context of value is, the deep end of the pool is where it's at.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, great. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate that in-depth response. And yeah, so really supporting our clients to potentially understand. And I believe extended disc also really shines a light on potential values,
It does. Mm.
strengths, so much more, so that when you support clients to unpack that profile, they become much more consciously aware of actually what drives them, what's important to them, where the stresses are, where the
Absolutely.
where the joy
Where the
is.
triggers are.
Yeah, so that they can make much more effective decisions about their way forward based on all of that conscious awareness that is being created.
And
Um,
to add to that, Janine, it's also about learning how. So remember how I just mentioned, and this is just a reminder of our beautiful people listening, how I mentioned there's two profiles in each report, this one and this one. Your natural inner world, unconscious, spontaneous response to the world, and then you've got your conscious one. So when you are aware of how you are dialing up and dialing down your energies out there in comparison to what's within, you're beginning to learn what I believe one of the highest levels of behavioral flexibility that exists. And that is where you might be one type of personality, but you learn how to dial in or dial up or dial down other aspects of you that are non-dominant that you can bring to the fore to achieve a certain goal, to create a certain level of focus, or even to make some complex decisions that require your own version of out of the box thinking. And out of the box thinking in an e-disc sense is where you're making a decision from a different perspective of the quadrant. So you're learning how to access and dance on the entire dance floor, not just in your comfortable little corner.
mm, yeah, exactly. To flex, because we all of us as human beings have access to all of these different
Yes,
styles of energy,
that's
and
right.
we need all of these styles of energy, and we need all of these different styles of different ways of behaving and communicating and energy. But we have the ability to flex into those areas that are not so strong, dependent on, as you say, the goal, the
Yeah,
aspiration that you're seeking. So, uh,
indeed.
yeah, so really appreciating what you've shared, and I remember um, potentially a simple profile being unpacked for myself, and so this is going back to your reference to pigeonholing and perhaps putting in a box. And it was what was shared with me was that potentially I like everything nice and neat and organized and um, et cetera, et cetera. And I was absolutely thinking to myself, that's not me. That's not me. Um, I I'm not that organized. I'm not into the detail. I'm not great at analyzing the deeper detail, or it's not my preference. It's not what I
Yeah,
try and avoid that. Um, so like you, I'm a bigger picture style, but yet potentially the way that I am perceived in the world, the way that I communicate. Often people say, "You're very calm, Janine. You're very calm. You've got a calm way of being." But underneath, there is if I can bring an image of a duck with the feet
hmm,
paddling badly, that's what I feel I am. Underneath how I present myself, I'm making things happen. I'm a doer. I'm a creator.
yeah,
I can't sit still. I like to be out and about and making things happen. So so yes, it's so important to recognize that extended disc is not, I believe, is not about pigeonholing. It's really about understanding your strengths, what's important to you, and what perhaps is getting in the way of, what it is that you really want to create in the world so that you can flex into those other ways of being without overextending self.
Indeed.
No.
Indeed.
Go.
Please. I
Is,
was just going to say, Janine, that once you know your accurately and precisely know your profile, you get to know what your superpowers are, and then your mission is to become and remain loyal to those superpowers. And what I mean by superpowers, I don't mean that from an ego perspective. I mean that from, so for example, a D energy is D stands for dominant, and we know from a basic sort of understanding of this that D energy superpower is their incredible, relentless focus on a goal. Once they've decided that this is what I'm going to do, they're not distracted. Nothing's going to get in the way. They don't sabotage, procrastinate. It's like, give me the straight and narrow path straight to that goal, and I'll get it done. The I Energy's superpower, amongst many different things, is their ability to diffuse critical situations, conflict situations. The I Energy uses charisma and humor if they're psychologically mature. An I Energy is able to use their charisma and humor to navigate any difficulty and get along with anyone. The superpower is to diffuse hot situations amongst other powers. The S Energy superpower is its incredible memory and amazing capacity to listen, to not only listen, but absolutely demonstrate to the person that they're listening to how much they remember. And S Energy is detail orientated but kinesthetically driven, so they can remember all of the personal details that one is bringing into the conversation, and that really, validates the other person's because they're being seen and being heard. And the C Energy superpower is their ability to relentlessly focus like the D energy, but on analyzing complex ideas or complex data and navigating that and getting to a research-driven, fact-orientated, accurate conclusion. We've all got those. These are the macro superpowers, and you've got the combinations of all different types and the combined superpowers. When you know that, and when you know your captain energies, it starts to give you also a flavor. Captain energies is my term, just to say your dominating energies. Is once you know the energies that dominate your psychological landscape, you can now become more aware of how you construct your decisions. You know what is driving you. You can also get a big clue in terms of what you value. To give you an example, S energies, the stability-based type that I often refer to as the mother archetype because of their caring, nurturing nature. The S energy has this, as I was saying earlier, the superpower of listening and connecting one-on-one. And the S energy itself has got this incredible staying power when it comes to being present for whatever subject matter, whatever that the other person is actually presenting to them. And each of these, and when you look at the S energy, one of the consistent values that I seem to find is a link between the S energy and this particular value that I'm about to share with you seems consistent, because no matter who I am in front of, no matter what socioeconomic level, industry, skill set, backdrop, this has been consistent. And the S energy values reliability and dependability. And reliability is something that we need to be aware of when we're talking to what matters to an S energy. And each of these types have got their own, values or aspects that are incredibly important to them. So, yeah, it's really important to know that.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe, because, and you're answering a question that I wanted to ask you was in relation to another powerful element of extended disc is for people to not only understand themselves, but also to have an appreciation of the other styles of energy, and what are their needs, or what are the things that spark and light them up? Um, what are
Yeah.
their fears? So that we can adjust our approach in relation to what we perceive as perhaps the dominant style of energy that someone is presenting. So, and again, it's not about potentially, it's not about pigeonholing.
Mm.
But if we get an appreciation of someone's way that they like to be approached, spoken to, then we can adjust accordingly. So I'm thinking of a
Mm.
conversation that I had yesterday with a potential corporate client, and there was um, again different personalities in the room, and there was one gentleman who really wanted to, really get to the point. He was really there seemed to be a little bit of impatience there. So it meant that I could adjust and also get to the point in terms of what they were asking me. So, but also being aware of the other styles as well. So peppering in uh,
Mm.
what I know would be important for, as you say, the I style, the relationship, charismatic style. So we can just make little slight adjustments in terms of how we communicate and approach those different styles in a way that
100%.
hopefully, all the people that we want to create those relationships with, that something is landing for them.
Well, something important to add to that, Janine, is that there's a universal critical thinking principle that, still to my surprise today, is very little known. It's known quite reasonably strongly in the coaching fraternity, but in the general world, this critical thinking principle that I'm going to share with you in a second, is not something that's known out in the world, especially in the business world and even leadership world, for all that matters. And that thinking principle, the critical thinking principle, is the map is not the territory. And what we need to understand is that this thing exists. What does that even mean? The map is not the territory. I mean, I'll just give you a very simple sort of insight into it, because there's so many layers to this. Is that our map is our model of the world. It's our personal mindset. It's the way that we see things subjectively. It's very subjectively driven by unique filters. So that's how you see things, how I see things, and how other people see things. That's very, very unique. And then you have the territory, which are the facts, which is what is present. So in that meeting today with your potential corporate client, new corporate client, there was the territory. The territory was the lay of the land. What's the lay of the land? Well, the purpose and the reason of why we've gotten together here. What is the outcome of this meeting? What are we looking to achieve? What clarity are we seeking? And then, let's just say, for argument's sake, there were 5 people in that meeting. You have 5 different unique models of the world or maps, and you cannot access or connect meaningfully with anyone until you've actually entered their model of the world. Now, our model of the worlds, all of our models of the world are extremely unique, and they're made up of multiple layers of complex layers of filters. There's heaps of them. There's a couple of hundred of these filters. Now, there's a couple of significant ones that are macro, that are quite massive, and that is your belief system and your e-disc profile. Because if you're talking like you were saying about this fellow today or yesterday, who was wanting to get to the point. If he is D energy, then you need to access his map or to connect with him, you need to talk his particular language, his particular thinking style, his particular energetic style, and also his decision-making style. And you can't know this if you don't know any of this even exists. And to give you a simple example, Janine, I often run an exercise in all my trainings when I teach the map is not the territory, where I get the room to, put the dictionary aside and to jot down without thinking what the definition of the word intense means. And you get people writing hard, serious, focused, thrilling. And so then I get the person in the room who says focused and the person says hard. And I just say, let's pretend that these two are having a conversation. This one says that intensity means focused. This one says that it's hard. Well, imagine if this one says to this one, I've had a really intense day today. Gee, that must have been really awful for you. And this person's responding with, what do you mean? I just said I had an intense day. Yeah, that must have been so, so hard. It's like, but that's not what I said. Or you reverse that conversation the other way around. And this person's saying to this one, gee, I've had a really intense day today. Gee, you must have got a lot done. It's a pleasure and a delight to be so focused. And this one's going, what the hell? Where have you been? What planet are you coming in from? Now, that's one word that has different definitions in different maps. Now, imagine D energy, I energy, S energy, C energy, combinations of DS, IC, ISC, all these combinations that exist. that once we know someone's profile, it gives us a very this is an I was going to say a sniper-like ability. That sounds awful. To be able to enter someone's world really precisely, and I think that's a very rare and very valuable gift that you can not only teach others but also bring into your life. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing my example to life. Um,
Yeah.
my conversation yesterday.
Welcome.
Yeah. So I was very aware of the different styles. Often in our world, we attract very kind of similar um, coaching world, I would say. We
Yes.
attract very similar styles of communication and energy,
Mm,
but it's not always going to be the case. And certainly
no,
working with leaders in organizations, they will potentially have a very different style from ourselves as well. So
completely.
really shining a light on and to support that conscious awareness can really open up a person's world and
Absolutely.
choices, abilities, etc., etc.
Mm,
So, so Joe, I know we've spent some great time understanding much, much, much more about extended disc. Really appreciate the depth that you've shared with us. So before we do wrap up, I wanted to check in with you. What else might you like to share with the audience that you believe is perhaps important to know, or you would like
mm.
them to
From a profiling perspective,
say that again?
from a profiling perspective,
From
yeah.
any in terms of in relation to extended disc.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that there's a certain style of thinker or personality type, behavioral type that comes into coaching. Something that is worth remembering or to know and then to remember, and that is that the bottom half of the quadrant. So when we look at the DISC spread, we often have in eDisc we have D in the top right hand corner. I might be in a mirror reflection here on this Zoom call, but the top right-hand corner is D and the bottom right-hand corner is I. The bottom left-hand corner is S. Top left-hand corner is C. And so it goes anti-clockwise DISC. The reason why I'm sharing that with you is because the model is presented in eDisc in order of energetic intensity, And then when you look at the whole framework, what's fascinating about the coaching world is that if we look at the bottom half of the quadrant, which is IS energy, in Australia, I'm not sure of the statistics in the UK, but I know that in Australia, 70% of the population are IS, and we know that IS, and this is a generalization I'm making, which of course means there's a heaps of exceptions to this, but ISs are often naturally gifted in emotional and social intelligence. They're into relationships, they're into connection, they're kinesthetic by nature. And so that's why a lot of coaches who come into this space are a combination of ISs. Not everyone, but a lot of people. And then you've got the DCs, which is the top half of the quadrant, which are more things orientated, systems orientated, process orientated. 30% of the population spread in Australia is made up of DCs. And what's important to know is that for those of you who have your own consulting business or coaching business or training business or want to have one or want to take it next level, I cannot speak highly enough of the critical nature of understanding how to be energetically and behaviorally flexible so you know how to talk to each of those corners of the quadrant dance floor so you can speak outside of self in order to connect with potential clients that are completely different to how you think. And it's easy to get along with people who are energetic neighbors because we're similar in our maps. There's map overlap or our models of the world have got overlap. But then you've also got people whose maps are quite disparate from ours, and they're the ones that we need to work harder to connect with. And that's what behavior flexibility is ultimately about. So, um, and also we're born the way we're born. There is no choice in the matter of that. Just like there's no choice that you're destined to be 5'8", like I am or 6'6" or whatever, right? It's the same with your behavioral profile. Often people will say to me, "Oh, can profile ever change?" And it's extremely rare. In eDisc, what we notice is that the home base, the inner world, the way we're wired on the inside naturally, rarely changes. But the other profile, the one where we're dialing up and dialing down our energies, is always constantly changing based on the perception of the demands that our life or our role is bringing into us. So I hope there was something in. Look, hopefully, Janine, with the conversation that we've had here, that there's been been good value there for our listeners here.
Yeah. No, I truly believe there is so much value that you brought to the conversation, Joe. Um, and just adding to what you've shared, I believe those really life-changing, defining moments can also support us to step into consciously, perhaps, a different energy. Um, so I,
It can. It can. Extreme circumstances can change our natural profile, but that is still pretty rare. What changes is how our captain energies are expressed into the world. So, as a 55-year-old man, it's like the way I express my I energy and S energy is very different to how I used to express it at 25. At 25, I was overly reliant on my I energy, the humorist, the joker, the entertainer, literally in every sense. Whereas as I've matured, hopefully I've matured, ask my wife, the S energy takes the lead and the I energy just comes out when it needs to. Because the S energy is a lot calmer and a lot more stable, right? Whereas the I energy can be very frantic, like a firework, sparkly. And but the S energy is not. So it's interesting. So the way we express through our captain energies changes. It might seem like our personality has changed, but it actually hasn't. It's evolved in its expression through the captain energies.
yes, yes, I believe absolutely there is truth in what you're sharing, and I'm just reflecting upon myself as a um, very young child, very shy, very, very, very shy, painfully shy, would not connect with people. And potentially I came into this world with a certain, as you say, the captain energy, and perhaps that early childhood upbringing suppressed that captain energy, so that when I stepped into teenagehood and an adult, the the part of me that loves to connect with lots of people, the part that, really wants to be out and about and just really um, get to know people and of course in my work support people, um, has absolutely overshadowed that little shy girl. Um, but of course, I know she's still there,
Yeah,
secretly,
yeah, yeah.
secretly there.
So what
Um,
you find is that what you're describing there is as you're getting older, and I'm talking way back when in the teens and into your 20s, is using your language, which I think is fantastic, is you begin to step into yourself. And that is where you get to realize, this is what is contained within. Because when you begin to express through your captain energies, you cannot help but experiencing joy, energy, and fulfillment.
mm,
That is so important. Like I remember back in 1989, when I was 19, I still had no idea I didn't even know this conversation even existed. And I went to uni and I went down the wrong road. I went into a science degree specializing in food science and technology and organic chemistry. Um, it was awful. Please, I'm saying that respectfully to any of our chemist friends here on the call. It was not for me until someone said to me randomly, which changed my life, the most simplistic of insights, just changed the trajectory of my direction, where this person will work every Thursday would work in this lab. Thursday was our longest day on campus. It was 10 or 11 hours. It would end with the last 3 hours working in a lab that was 2 stories underground, no windows. It was as depressing as all get up. And this person said to me after about nearly a year of doing this, said, "My God, man, what are you doing here?" I felt like the piano man, like, "What are you doing here, man? You should be out playing the piano." And he said to me, "You're not into things. This is all about things. You're into people. What are you doing here?" It's like, it was a wake-up call. I was like, "Oh my God, how come I never thought of that?" Because nothing is obvious until it is.
yeah,
And the moment I stepped into starting to get to know what my energies were and what I'm about, that's when I changed into the psychology sociology stream into a completely different university. Then I began finding my feet. And I think part of finding your feet as a teen and adolescent and in your 20s is realizing what are these captain energies that are contained within. And when you tap into them, you feel joy, you feel energy dialing up, and you feel fulfilled.
Yes. And that's another great point, because we, as human beings, we can do well in those areas or fields of being and doing that
Mm,
are not our captain energies. We can do well, but they will not bring joy, or as much joy as potentially as stepping into our captain energy, but they can drain us down. I'm again thinking of my own personal experience of pursuing accountancy because my parents thought that would be a great idea, and I listened to I listened to them, and after 1 year of doing an accounting degree, I was just about to re-enroll, and I thought, I can't do this. I can't.
no,
This is not me. I cannot do
yeah,
this, and I walked away. Um, so there's so much more to that story, but I know
yes,
that we're coming to the end of this
yeah,
podcast, but I also wanted to share with the audience that, again, when we are, so Joe, you talked about flexing and adapting to other people's language. So it's not about changing ourselves as such. It is just bringing in a language that can speak to another. So
yes,
we're not changing who we are. We are just using a different form of language, and it doesn't need to be intense. It can be quite um, peppered, so that the person that we are, or the people that we're aiming to communicate, can hear what we are sharing. So again, coming back to that analogy of language, it's just like, for example, Joe, if you spoke only in Italian and I spoke only in English, but I want to speak to you, I want to connect with you, then potentially I would learn Italian to be able to communicate in your language so that we can have a conversation. That
indeed,
that's how I see these
yeah,
different styles of extended disc and
indeed.
bringing that language. So, Joe, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and knowledge. It's been a while since we've spoken about this together, and so it's a really fantastic refresher. I'm taking away so much more in relation to my understanding of extended disc. So thank you, and I trust our listeners also experience the same. So thank you, Joe.
Indeed. Thanks so much, Janine. Much appreciated.
And listeners, we'd love to hear your feedback. Please do send us messages either via our social media, or you can email support@empower-world.com to send in your questions, feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts and insights. And please do share if you found this to be really valuable and insightful to people that you think will also benefit from this particular podcast. And again, a huge thank you. Very grateful to you, Joe.
Thank you, Janine.
Thanks for listening. You can find out more about us on our website www.empower-world.com and on our social media networks: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Be empowered.